Everyone. Hi again. Thank you so much for coming. We've been really excited about this event and having Charles with us today. At IIS, we're super compelled to hear from people with lived experience of the types of challenges and crises that we tried to work on and study here. So we're really excited that so many of you agreed and took the time to join us. So my name is Jess. I'm the executive director of IIS, and we're in the middle of a very full semester and month of really full talks. But like I said, especially excited for this. And Charles is going to spend a lot of time talking about his own story, so we won't give too long of an introduction. We'll let him introduce you to himself. But our student assistant, Sophia, who helped plan all the logistics for this talk, is just going to read a short intro.
Hi everyone, my name is Sophia. I'm a freshman here. I'm studying political science with an emphasis in international relations. So being able to work here at the Institute is truly an honor, and to meet incredible people like Charles. So today we're going to hear a talk from Charles, who is a North Korean defector who rebuilt his life in the United States after surviving multiple escape attempts. And today he's going to share his story to help others better understand life inside North Korea and the challenges that many face when starting over. Through his work, Charles has reached a global audience, offering a rare firsthand perspective on one of the most closed-off countries. And his mission is to support and uplift North Korean refugees while helping others see beyond headlines and stereotypes. So today we have the really unique and incredible opportunity to hear from him firsthand. So everyone, please give a warm welcome to Charles.
Well, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. Let's give it a round of applause to IIS for providing pizza and also the drink. Free food, right? It's always gonna be a good thing. So my name is Charles. I escaped North Korea twice, and behind me is a picture of where I escaped to. So this side is North Korea, and that side is China. And I'm not sure when this picture was taken, but I crossed both times this river right here, and then I crossed into China, not to the hotel, but to the China side. I was born and raised in North Korea to a Chinese father and a North Korean mother. But when I was 5, my dad abandoned me and my mom and left to China, and he didn't come back. And I unfortunately lost my mother due to starvation 6 years later. And from then on, I had to basically figure out how to live alone, begging for food from the strangers in the street and battling starvation and freezing winter weather. I had the opportunity to live with my aunt for about a year in Sariwon when I was like 11. I also lived with my half brother for about 2 years. And when I was 14, I had the first opportunity to escape North Korea because my dad, who was in China, was like, hey, I want to see Toru, so why don't you go rescue him from my aunt's house and bring him to China? So back in 2008, I first escaped through that river without knowing that I was escaping North Korea. I just thought that, I'm gonna go live with my dad because my half brother told me so. It's like, yeah, all you need to do is just go to that river, while guards are waiting for you with AK-47. Just swim across and your dad's gonna be on the other side waiting for you with a taxi cab, and just drive off and you're gonna be home free. So I was like, okay. So my half brother arranged brokers, and he had arranged a smuggler, and then the smuggler had bribed the border guards to actually look away while I'm crossing the river. So, during the daytime, I walked into the river and I was, pretending that I was taking a bath. And then when I thought I was finally safe, I swam across and my dad was on the other side. And then we drove off and I came to China. Man, life in China was so much better than North Korea. Like, I mean, it's kind of, like American standards, right? China has no freedom, right? There's no freedom of movement, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, all those kind of things. But to a North Korean who's coming to China, it was like, for me, it was like heaven, because like there's all the food that you can eat, like the food that I've never seen before. Like just for the context, right? In North Korea, if you were to get captured with a Bible, not just you, but your entire 3 generations of your family will be persecuted. The law is called crime by relation, right? So, and you can get persecuted for watching South Korean drama, right? It depends on, you could go to 4 years of prison camp, or you could go to political prison camp, or you could be publicly executed for just watching South Korean drama. And it depends on how many people you have like contaminated, basically, depending on like how many people you're watching with, how many times you have passed around the DVD or CD or the micro SD card and things like that. And coming to China, I could watch all the South Korean dramas I've wanted, I could sleep however I wanted, and all the food, PC cafe, arcade, so, I tell people that, it was like, I thought, that was going to be my life. I thought that was going to be how it's going to be. And, I'm going to have this forever. But unfortunately, Chinese government doesn't recognize North Koreans as refugees. So they arrested me and they deported me back to North Korea. So China and North Korea had this kind of like agreement called Friendship Treaty that was written back in the, I think, 70s or 60s. I think it might have been during the war. And then because of that, Chinese government don't recognize North Koreans as either economic or political migrants. So they capture them and send me back. And yeah, I was sent back to North Korea at the age of 15. And the border guards and the secret police actually interrogated me for 2 weeks. And they're asking me all different kind of questions. Are you trying to, what did you eat in China? Who did you meet in China? Where did you go? Like, I like very like a sleeping routines as well. And then eventually they, like they asked me to confess that I was trying to defect to South Korea because that's what most of North Korean defectors do when they escape, right? They are trying to go to South Korea, but I told the secret police that, well, I went to China to go live with my dad. I had no desire to defect, and I basically checked and understand. And after 2 weeks of beating and an intense interrogation process, I was finally released to a North Korean defectors detention center that's in Cheongjin-si. And that's where all of these North Korean defectors would go to be sent back to their homes to be processed to either go to jail or to go to political prison camp. So it was kind of like like a labor camp to the labor camp that I was about to go. But I didn't go to the 4 years of prison camp because I was a minor at the time. But the work was no joke. So I was fed 150 kernels of corn per day. There's a job for people counting those corns in the detention center. So this detention center is designed to break me, right? And you are working up to 12 hours. We go out before the sun comes up, and we come back to the cell when the sun goes down. And there are many rules that you have to memorize in the detention center to make sure that it's kind of like you're getting re-brainwashed and you're not going to talk about what you saw, what you felt, even what you ate in China. And they would storm into our cells and basically force us to recite the rules of the camp. And if you were misquoted with one of them, they would force you to stand all night reciting the rules until work began the next morning. So it was on one of those sleepless nights that I vowed I would not die here and I will escape North Korea again. And 9 months later, I was finally released because I could not even stand up or even lift my arm because I had lost so much weight that I was a worthless worker. And they sent me back to my half brother's house in Suncheon. It was 2009, and during early 2010, actually, North Korean regime did a currency devaluation. It was they're trying to control the black market and how the money is managed because North Korea, we do not have banking systems. Well, we do have banking systems, but it doesn't work. Nobody owns a debit card, nobody owns a credit card, nobody knows how banking system works. So everybody just keeps stacks of cash in their, on their ceilings or on their walls. And it's quite ironic because North Korea is socialist like a paradise, right? Where there is no they hate capitalism, right? They hate America for capitalism. But if you look at North Korean how the economy is run, which is through the black market, like it's basically like a capitalism. There's a saying in North Korea, you can find everything except for cat's horn in Changmadang, right? Because the cat's horn doesn't exist. That means you can find everything. So everything has been smuggled in from China. There's dedicated people, entire people's livelihood is depending on smuggling the goods from China to North Korea. So these kind of smugglers have a connection in China, and they call them up and say, hey, I need a motorcycle. Then this person would go to some Chinese market, buy a motorcycle, and then at night, they would put that motorcycle on this makeshift boat that has been made from a tractor tire tube. And they just bring everything from refrigerator, motorcycle, TVs. One time I've seen a clothings, but it's not just a one clothing, two clothings. There's so much clothings that we actually measure in kilograms, not by counting. And then when you get the product, the North Korean smuggler will roll the money on a rock, and they would throw over the river, and then the Chinese the broker will go find it, and they would actually use that money to us too. So you can't look at a North Korea without the black market, right? So the origination of the black market comes from during the North Korean regime calls it the arduous march, but it was the famine that happened in the early 90s. And North Korean people realized that they cannot trust the regime anymore because United Nations approximate that anywhere between 600,000 to 1 million people starved to death during that time. So North Korean people started growing own crops in their backyard and whatever they can grow or whatever they can find, and started selling things onto the black market, and that's how the name black market was originated. But now it's not called the black market anymore. It's called Changmadang. So in the Changmadang, you're assigned a seat on those Changmadangs, and you have to be over 40 years old, and you have to be a woman to sell those things. Buying, it doesn't matter who you are, but to sell, you have to be over or 40 years old, and money's flowing, and people are getting rich, and because North Korea has this caste system, right? We have this Songbun system that works a lot like the caste system. So we have the elite, and then we have the middle class, and then we have the lower class, and then we have the hostile class. So hostile class is the people who used to work with Japanese during the Japanese colonial, or landowners or company owners. And in North Korea now, this hostile class are actually getting richer than middle class or working class people because they actually run this, like entrepreneurship in Changmadang and start buying things, selling things in masses. So North Korean regime did not like that. So what they did was the currency devaluation. They made 1,000 worth of one. And they came out one day, announced it, and return all of your money, and we will give you 500 North Korean won per person in your household. So if you had a house of 3, then you would get 1,500 North Korean won. If you had like 5, then 2,500, right? Mind you, 1 kilogram of rice at that time, like right before the currency devaluation happened, was 5,000 North Korean won. And North Korean regime promised that it's gonna go to cents, not in hundreds. It's gonna go down to cents. Don't use the money. Don't keep it because it's gonna go lower and lower. But a couple months later, everything just jumped back right up to 5,000 North Korean won, and everybody lost everything. And when I came back, I was mixed in all of that. And my half brother, he actually has some business printing fake shoe soles, and selling it to the Suncheon, a little house like entrepreneurs. And he lost everything too. And that's when I saw people actually, I wouldn't say rebel, but people are actually trying to stand up to the regime, such as like throwing cash into the river, right? Because you're not supposed to do that because we have our leader's face on the money. And if you were to fold newspaper in a wrong way, you could go to 6 months jail for that. But people are throwing out this old money into the river, and one of my neighbors actually bought pork and glazed it with cyanide, and then the entire family ate it and committed suicide because they rather choose that than whatever was going to come next. And my half brother lost everything too, and he told me, well, now you're 15 and a half, almost 16, so you have to take care of yourself. And my half brother asked me to go work at a coal mine because at the time, the elites knew that it was going to happen. Elites knew that there's going to be a currency devaluation. So right before it happens, they exchanged the North Korean currency with either US dollars, Chinese yen, and they bought gold as well. So they held something and actually that of a value. And when everything went right back up, they sold it, and then they became rich. So more people, like richer people, became more richer in North Korea, and poor people became even poorer in North Korea. And one of these elites, the way that they were trying to make more money was buying a coal mine in North Korea under a supervision of the bribing the North Korean the regime and purchasing a coal mine. So where I'm from, it's called Chitongtangwang in Suncheon. So it's really well known for its coal mine. The reason why it's really, really well known for the coal mine is because that coal mine was built by Japanese, not by North Korean, because you can actually see somebody planned it and thought it through, and everything is tall, in concrete, and it still works. But the subtunnels is where things gets really, really messy because like the coal mine owners needed bodies and they just hire anybody in a promise of giving them rice. So they're not like coal mine experts nor scientists. They don't know how to build a mine. Just like, oh, just put up wood in this way, that way, blah blah blah. So so I started working at coal mine when I was 16, and I worked there for about a year. And again, accidents happening all the time, and people losing limbs and even lives. And I had to watch a friend getting crushed by a coal cart when it actually flipped. So after working in the mine for about a year, I realized that it's gonna be sudden death. Either I'm gonna die here or dying trying to escape North Korea again. And I still have a chance because I'm a minor. This is one of the most like a misconception that people get. It's like if you were to defect North Korea the first time, are North Korean regime gonna kill your entire family? It depends. So depending on who you are and what you used to do in North Korea, the punishment differs, right? So if you escape North Korea, went to China, nearby the border town, and just lived there for a couple months and got captured and deported back to North Korea, most case like, oh yeah, you were hungry, you just wanted to go explore China, 4 years of prison camp. But if you were to get captured in deeper inside of China, like such as Kunming, which is deeper south, that is like the route where North Korean defectors take to go to South Korea. And if you get captured there, then more questions are following, right? Because the reason why North Korean regime is strictly punishing those people who are trying to defect to South Korea is because North Korean regime has been lying to the people that South Korea is poor, kids are selling gums on the street, shining American bastards, excuse my language, but American bastards shoes to make a ends meet, right? But you are trying to go to South Korea. That means you know something that North Korean regime doesn't want you to know. Therefore, they don't want to release you back into society, right? So that's when you, like, if you are proven that you are trying to go to back to South Korea, then your life is over and your parents or your family members will be exiled from wherever they're leaving or wherever they're leaving to middle of nowhere. And then the final case is the defectors who speak up, right, in South Korea after they defect. I know a defector friend who is an elite. He was studying in China and he defected. Because of his defection, his family were executed because he was an elite and North Korean regime have given them such privilege and trust, and you abandon that. And for me, I'm nobody. Right? I'm just a kid. Again, like I had my father was in China at the time, so I was released. And a lot of times, if I was an adult, and a lot of adults, they will be sent to 4 years of labor camp. But for me, because I was a minor, I was just released under a supervision of my half brother. And then, yeah, so that's why I didn't go to the labor camp, and I still had chance because I was 17. And I mean, I've met this guy when I was in the detention center who escaped North Korea 8 times. Yeah, and he was a kid, and he was crossing the river every now and then, and he gets released to a orphanage, and then he would just escape again, go to China, and then get captured, sent back. So one morning, while I was working at coal mine, I stole 5 flashlights, and instead of entering the mine, I walked up the path and began running. And I sold those flashlights at the market, and I used that money to survive the next 3 months. I was homeless, and again, it was May, so the weather was pretty nice. In North Korea, in the wintertime, it's brutal. It's really cold, and it's, yeah, you don't want to be homeless there in North Korea. Yeah, so in August, I was lying down on a hillside and I saw a train come to stop and people were exiting out of the train cars. And I approached the train and I realized that the train was going to the border town from Pyongyang to Hesan. So I was like, this is my chance. I gotta get on that train. And even though I was a homeless, I dressed up pretty clean. And in North Korea, like power outage happens very regularly, very frequently. So the train just stops in the middle of nowhere. Or that's the case. Or the train conductor knows somebody's throwing a party somewhere, the elite, then he would just turn off the train and he would just go, drink and eat and take a nap and just tell people that, oh, the power went out. Can't really do anything, right? And this was a testimony from a North Korean defector that was on there's a show called Imangap, Now We Go to Meet You. I was like, whoa, that was the reason why it took me like 2 days to get from where I was to where I was going. Just for context, if we're to drive from Suncheon to Hisan, the entire peninsula could be drivable like within like 8 to 10 hours. Again, like the both Korea, North and South combined, it's still smaller than half of California, right? So it took me 2 days to get to the border town. And in North Korea, there is no freedom of movement, right? You have to have traveling documents, you have to have tickets, and there are guards that are basically checking your tickets and documents. And it would have been impossible for me to get on that. But when I joined the crowd, and when the power came back on, I slowly approached the train, and then I lied to the guard that my mother was on the train and she had my documents, and I promised the guard that I would bring her back to him once I get on the train. And people are busy, going on and hustling and bustling. It's like, oh, okay, go on. So I went onto the train, and yeah, for the next 2 days, I had to hit on the train. Sometimes I would hide in between the hitch of the two cars, or I would I would climb out of the bathroom window and hang there for a little bit, or even climb up to the roof of the train, right? Because if I were to get captured, there is no mercy, because I already escaped North Korea once, and now I'm on a train that is going to the border town. Therefore, I will be punished. And eventually, 2 days later, I came to the border town, and then I walked into the river that divides North Korea and China, and I hid in the tall grass for many years, somewhere around here. I can't exactly pinpoint where it was, but somewhere around here. And then I hid in the grass, and every 100 meter of these alongside these borders, there are security guard posts with guns, and that was back in 2011. And now in 2026, all along these lines, there's an electric fence now. So it would have been what, like, so that's why there is right now the number of North Korean refugees escaping North Korea 2026 is 0 this year. And since 2019, the number has been slowly decreasing because the border security. Yeah, but 2011, and then I hid in the tall grass for many hours, waiting for the darkness. And when I finally thought it was safe, I quietly waded into the water. And I started swimming, and the current was really fast, so I couldn't really swim, so I had to walk. And then in the middle of the river, I slipped on a rock and I let out a gasp. And one of the guard found me, and he started screaming, saying, "Come back here or I will shoot." But at that point, I knew I was dead either way. Either he would shoot me or I would obey and return to the shore, only to be shipped off to the labor camp. I decided not to stop, and I kept wading ahead. The guard kept screaming at me, but he never pulled the trigger, thankfully. Another fun fact about North Korean military, they shoot 3 bullets a year. 3 bullets a year. And it's quite, and I've seen like this kind of like the special forces kind of like breaking the bricks, and like doing splits and all those kind of things, recently on the social media. Yeah, I know why, because they can't really shoot a gun, so they have to be physical. yeah, and then I came to China side, and then I walked there for so somewhere in the mountain. I took off running, and because I didn't want it to be in that city. Um, in China, there aren't like security posts, like the police officers waiting for you. It's not like that. There are cameras everywhere, and then police patrol cars oftentimes just goes by. And if I were to stay there a long time, I could have been, caught. So I didn't want that. I just took off running. I walked in China for 3 days without any proper meal. I was hungry, I was dehydrated, I was exhausted. And because I was walking so much that my North Korean quality shoe fell apart, and my feet got blisters. It popped and started bleeding, so I could not walk anymore. So I collapsed. And I started crying. I started just blaming my parents. Like, why did you bring me to this world if you can't really take care of me? And when I actually first came to China, a pastor came to my house. South Korean pastor came to my house and gave me a Gospel of Matthew. I'm not sure why Matthew, but he gave me a Gospel of Matthew. And then each time he came to our house, he would check in and ask me, how many pages have you read? So I would just say, oh, I read two, I read three. Then he would give me money based on how many pages of the Gospel of Matthew I've read. So I was like, oh yeah, well, I don't really know what's going on. And it's like, oh, this is Christianity, it's Jesus died for us. Like, oh, okay, well, I don't know what that means, but I'm getting money, so I'm gonna read anyway. So I'm Christian now, and I tell people that that pastor actually bribed me into the kingdom. So that's kind of a thing that I've done. And at that point, I started praying. I was praying out of desperation, and I was just screaming and yelling and telling God, if you actually exist, don't let me die like this in the middle of nowhere. I regret leaving North Korea. Like if I were to stay in North Korea, right in the coal mine, I would have something in my stomach right now, and I would, have roof over my head, and I would not at least die like this. And sometime later, this Chinese guy was driving motorcycle. He stops. Oh, so he passes me by. He stops, and then he comes back, and then he's just looking at me and saying like, what is, I mean, he obviously knows that I'm, not Chinese kid. Like I'm just like short, dark, and malnourished and without shoes and, so he can tell that I'm from North Korea. And he's just standing there just looking at me. He's like, what are you doing here? Um, I still do speak broken Chinese. So I told him that, oh, I'm looking for my father in China. So he connected me to a South Korean pastor. So he took me to, so he was thinking for a while, and then he's like, okay, get on my motorcycle. So we rode for many hours to his house. And then the next day, he connected me to a South Korean pastor. He gave me food, medication for my feet, and then he gave me some money too. And then the South Korean pastor asked me, do you want to go to South Korea or are you looking for your dad? So I said, like, I know what happens, like, if you're trying to go to South Korea. So I did not know if this was a test. I was like, no, 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 I don't want to go to South Korea. I'm just looking for my dad in China. And then the South Korean pastor was like, okay. So he got me on a bus to go to my dad's house in Hunchun. It's a Chinese city in Yanbian. And then as soon as I knock on the door of my dad's house, he flips out and he whips out a belt and start beating me. And he's asking, did you kill a person in North Korea? Did you commit a murder in North Korea? Because he doesn't understand that like how a 17-year-old kid could actually cross international border risking his life. And to actually, risk all of that, it must be something the greater that you're escaping from, right? And I told my dad, no, I was hungry, I missed you. Um, And my dad reluctantly took me in. And then eventually he was, saying to me that, well, if you stay here, you have no future. You're going to get captured, and you'll be sent back. And this time you will have no mercy. Or you can actually try to go to South Korea. So I'll try that. So I met a broker who was helping North Korean refugees escape from China to South Korea. So I tagged along on the broker. So from China to Laos and Laos to Thailand or either Myanmar, there's different routes. And then in Thailand, I applied for a international um I applied for a political asylum to United Nations. And then United Nations was able to grant me a refugee status. So I was able to come to America back in 2012. Um, yeah, when I first came to America, I mean, I say this all the time, but when I first came to America, it felt like getting into time machine and just fast forwarding 70 years into the future because, I mean, like, I don't really know anything. Well, first of all, I didn't speak any English when I first came to America. And and then I enrolled in a high school. And when someone asked me, how are you? Like, I would just stop there and I would just think, how am I? And I'm trying to think of like answer, but later on I learned that you just say good. I was like, oh, whoa, that's easy. And like walking into a grocery store, just seeing so many different brands of cereal, and like I was shocked looking at the oil sections, right? There's like grapeseed oil, avocado oil, the vegetable oil, corn oil, olive oil, virgin olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. I was just thinking like, what is this olive oil saving yourself for? Like Um, and it was a challenge. And I struggled a lot. And even though I struggled, I graduated from Concord High. It's about 20-minute East Bay. And then it was really challenging because I did not know what I was going to be and what I'm going to do with my life. And most importantly, I questioned why. Why am I here? And like, what am I supposed to do with this freedom that I have? And all of these informations that I have, what am I supposed to do? And eventually I was introduced to coding. And I got a scholarship to go to a coding boot camp in Silicon Valley. It's called Coding Dojo. And when I learned coding, actually my life changed a lot because I was introduced to a coding community, and from there I was able to build connections, and I was able to do networkings, and I got my very first job at this small Korean car company called Hyundai. Well, it's not so big. It's not so small. It's a big company. As a navigation engineer, I worked there for well like 6 months, and I kind of realized like, oh, I like the job. I'm getting paid really good, but I don't like the corporate life. It's like I don't like every morning driving in the traffic. It's like I'm sitting there just thinking about it. It's like, am I really here to design the map or like do different kind of things? So eventually I left the job because I wanted to do something more. So I started working another job at this small private Christian college called the Westman College as the mobile developer. And I was recently kind of promoted to be the senior system architect because I'm the only one who's kind of like designing the SIS, like the student information system and whatnot. It's been a blessing, and that's when I realized when you have community, you can actually thrive, right? A lot of people think that when North Korean refugees comes to either South Korea or to different countries, like life is good, like happily ever after, right? But their story don't end there. That's where it begins, right? For us, like I didn't even really know like what taxes was, right? I was like, what is tax? Like how do I buy a BART ticket? It's like, how do I do that? And for North Korean refugees that are in South Korea, sure, they get great benefits, right? The South Korean government gives them housing, stipends, and you can actually go to school, for free. Whereas like, in South Korea, it's very competitive. Like, in order for you to get into school, you have to go to like 5 a.m., go to the school and study there. And then when you get out at like 12 a.m., you gotta go to like this library for a while. Or actually, when you get up like at late at night, you go to like a hagwon, right? It's like a what's hagwon in private academies. Thank you. And then after that, you go to this library and study, right? It's very competitive, but for North Korean defectors, it's to get into college, it's free. You don't have to do all that because South Korean government, takes care of them. But because of those kind of reasons, there's a lot of conflicts, right, around South Korea and North Korean defectors coming into South Korea, getting tax money, and just not doing really anything. And when North Korean defectors come to South Korea, they're happy for first like 2 to 3 years because when they escape North Korea, they watch South Korean dramas when they're in North Korea, so they would imagine themselves being this like princess or like a random girl marrying this like a rich Teber, right? Yeah, rich Teber and becoming like but that's in the drama. That's not reality, right? And when the support runs out, when the honeymoon stage ends, that's when the real challenge starts, right? Because, okay, there is a support, and then you're just like, oh yeah, here's a monthly allowance, and then done. And I've lost two of my friends through suicide in the recent past 2 years, and one of them I used to know in North Korea, and the other one I used to work with them when I was working for a nonprofit over in North Korea. And that was kind of a final draw or final nail in the coffin, as you would say, or lack of better words. Like I gotta do something, right? So I started calling my North Korean friends, and anybody who took their own life, and it's like, oh yeah, I know many of them. And that's when the reality hit. And it's like, wow, so it's that severe, huh? So that's why when I started really going out to on the street, I remember just like walking down on in Santa Barbara in Isla Vista. I'm not sure if you guys know where that is, but walking in Isla Vista, I went into Starbucks and then I asked them, hey, can I borrow a Sharpie? And then can I just dig in your trash and find the cardboard? And then I just wrote ask them North Korean on the sign. And then I stood out and just like, it's like, hey, ask me any questions. I'm a North Korean defector. And ask me any questions like that. What's the meaning of life? Because I don't know either. Yeah, because and thankfully I've gained tractions and a lot of people were interested in my story. I'm grateful that they listened. And I wanted to be the voice for voiceless North Koreans because just sharing our stories doesn't make it, doesn't like alone doesn't make a change, right? What we build after does. So I've started this nonprofit called Freedom Bridge Foundation, where I want to help North Korean refugees, give them cultural exchange, educational support, and job training, and bring them to America and give them, connections, mentorship, and different opportunities. That's it. Yeah, and please do ask me questions. I think we have like 30 minutes or 40 minutes, right? So. Then yeah.
So what's remarkable from a Western point of view is when we see pictures of Koreans and their adoration for the leader. We see people crying, we see people applauding, we see soldiers surrounding the leader. and it is uncanny from our point of view. But what are those people thinking? Is it genuine, or are they doing it out of fear? What are they thinking, particularly since the border is bleeding? There's your story, there's many stories, there's other stories like you, there's balloons going over with CD-ROMs, etc. So people increasingly have access to a view of a different life. So there's a disconnect there. So what are people thinking, given that they have access to a vision of a different life, yet they seem to be still adoring of the regime?
That's a great question. Multiple parts. So when I was in North Korea, I did not really know about Kim Jong-un because after I escaped, that's when he became the dictator. I knew about Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, of course. When you are born, before you learn your parents' name, before you learn your parents' birth dates, you learn Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il's birthday and their names. You memorize it and where they used to live, how they used to live, right? So you're getting trained on this Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il and their histories. For example, in schools, right? We have, when I was in high school, there is a thing called world history. And then at the world history, I learned that America bombed Japan twice and they surrendered, right? But in North Korea, we learned that our great dear leader Kim Il-sung defeated the head-to-toe armed Japanese and saved us from the Japanese colonialism. And on top of that, now Americans are the wolves are looking, long nose, and hairy, and those kind of people are trying to take over North Korea. Therefore, Kim Jong-il is the only person who can protect us from there, protect us from that. So you are taught in a way from a young age that they're not, in a way, like a regular people. They're like the saviors, and they're like the different breeds of people. And I remember like a one in North Korean subject where Kim Il-sung actually turned pine cone into a grenade while fighting Japanese. And he also somehow knew how to manipulate the land in such a way that you can fly, right? So a lot of those kind of things are, you grew up learning about these leaders and treating like some sort of like God, right? But average North Korean people doesn't really get the opportunity to meet one of those leaders, because if you do meet one of those leaders, your life is kind of like in this like upward kind of trajectory, right? And again, like the only thing in life, for me when I was in North Korea, to be like Kim Il-sung's like body, like a shield, like literally body shield, like but because of these foreign medias that are going into North Korea nowadays, and again, like I must confess that I also watched South Korean drama and even American movies when I was in North Korea. When I was like 13, I watched the Bad Boys 1 by Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. And while watching that movie, like, yeah, these guys use like supercars, and like I remember like Martin Lawrence eating like a hamburger in his Porsche, right? In Will Smith's Porsche, and I was looking like, what is that? Like, what is he eating? Right? But something delicious. And those kind of things kind of changed my perspective about North Korea, and also my friends' perspective about North Korea, right? And yet they can't really say bad things about the regime or Kim Il-sung, because if that were to happen, then not just you, but your 3 generations of your family will be persecuted for that, right? So I'm not sure like the percentage of people believing in the regime in North Korea, but at least to me and my friends, like didn't really think that North Korea was richer than South Korea nor China. So we knew what was happening because we watched these dramas and movies. Because when we watch like the South Korean dramas and South Korean people like putting a balloon or SD cards or things that are smuggled in, we don't just like follow the storylines. We watch what's happening in the background and what's happening in kind of like a wider view. So yeah, I can't exactly tell you like, oh, this specific percentage of people. But at least when I was in North Korea, when watching the South Korean drama, it changed the perspective of like, are we really that like there's a saying 강성택 when I was in North Korea, it's like a translation, it's like an unbeatable state, like unbeatable, like a flourishing country. But I was questioning that. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. Yep.
In Thailand, why did you choose America?
Good question. So when I was in Thailand, I couldn't come to South Korea because South Korean government didn't accept me. Yeah, they because my dad is Chinese. So my father, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather came out to fight fight for North Korea during the war, and he did not go back to China. And he met my grandmother. My granddad didn't speak any Korean, nor my grandmother didn't speak any Chinese, but they somehow met and made it happen. And my dad was born in North Korea as half Chinese and half North Korean, which is term is called Hwagyo. So my dad was born Hwagyo, and therefore I am 25% Chinese and 75% North Korean. Yeah, so when I came to Thailand, and when I told him that, it's like, oh, you're Chinese, so we're gonna send you back to China. He's like, no, if you do that, I'm gonna die. And they're like, well, we'd love to help you, but we can't change the law. But South Korea is not the only way. So I was like, okay, and then I applied for UN. Yeah. Thanks for asking the question. Yes, and then.
So did you ever visit South Korea? And you also mentioned that you didn't like the corporate culture when you were working at Hyundai. So how did the coworkers, South Korean coworkers, you and interacts?
Oh, thank you for asking the question. Yes, I have visited South Korea back in 2018. And I lived there for 2 months. I was expecting more like Korea to be Korea, but it felt like a smaller version of New York, much cleaner version of New York. So I went to Seoul. If I were to go to like a countryside, I might have found that. But like me being a North Korean and thinking that, oh, it's Korea, it's my motherland, was like completely different. But I liked it. The food is cheap, great. And when I told my coworkers that I'm from North Korea, I mean, they were like, whoa, you can do anything. And I was like, you've escaped twice? Wow. I've never met a North Korean, but you have the determination. Because I'm gonna give you all the hard projects. But yeah, they were really nice. And then eventually the thing that I didn't like, well, like when you think about South Korean corporate culture, it's more like the hierarchy, right? There's like the culture is not really good. I mean, that's what I've been hearing about, but I've never worked in South Korean, like a corporate in South Korea. I just worked there when I was in Irvine. But they were great. Yeah, they were great. The work-life balance was great. And I got to, get paid well. And the coworkers were really nice. But I just didn't really see like how can I, incorporate my story into the work that work that I'll be doing, and the map wasn't the right choice for me. So I just thought, okay, I can't do this. So I left. Yeah, I have to answer your question. Yes. Sorry.
Does it feel that North Korean government absolutely banned the Western TV, just American TV or South Korean TV? And if you get caught watching those, you can be executed.
Yes. So the official North Korean state, there's only one official North Korean state media. And Kim Jong-un actually came up with a new law back in 2024. So back in 2013, I'm sorry, back in 2009, 2011, if you were to get captured while watching South Korean drama or American movies, like depending on how many people that you watched with, right? And depending on who you give it to, you could basically bribe it out. Right? You can just bribe the police officers, hey, I'm so sorry, because we all know each other, small town, right? We all know each other and it's like, hey, I'm so sorry. Here is some money, and then just get a slap in the wrist. Or worst case, like they want to use you as an example, you will go to 4 years of prison camp. But Kim Jong-un came up with a law that says if you were to listen to South Korean radios or to watch a South Korean drama, then yes, you'll be publicly executed, or you will go to a political prison camp for life. Though I've never seen public execution because they were watching South Korean drama when I was in North Korea. I've heard different public executions, people cutting the wires and trying to sell it as a copper. Or there was this one case back in 2007 when I was in Suncheon. There was a guy, like a rock forming, it's like a they make sculptures out of a rock, and the manager of the factory got bribed. I don't know if that's true. This is what the North Korean state media said. He was being bribed by South Korean pastors and basically trying to jeopardize North Korean system, the Juche ideology. So they shot 90 bullets to this guy. So 3 people came out and shot 30 bullets each. That was the only count that I know of. And then for the second one was the cutting electric wire guy. But yeah, I'm not sure right now. Back then it was like, yeah, you can go to labor camp. And also, again, like depending on how many people that you watched with. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. There, and then yeah.
Oh, I was gonna ask. I know you placed like a lot of emphasis on like you feel like cool and like looking out the world outside of the country. But I know you mentioned like you were watching Bad Boys. I was like, oh, was like really inspiring. What was like was that your first film? Like you watched in North Korea? Bad Boys was that the first film you watched?
Yeah, that was kind of like well, I mean, I grew up watching Soviet Union movies, a lot of Soviet Union movies, like while they're fighting Germans, and it's like being devoted to like Stalin, but Western films like American, yeah, that was the first one, and then I watched 007 the second, yeah.
I wasn't here when you were
Yeah.
I was
Yeah, so it's been smuggled in from China border into North Korea. So there are a lot of these people who are North Korean Chinese residents who are born in North Korea, like my father. They have passports. They can actually go to China and come back out. And a lot of times these people are the main reason why, a lot of like medias moves through into North Korea, technologies that moves into North Korea. Yeah, so it's smuggled in through the brokerage networks, and also sometimes like balloons that are going into North Korea. Not anymore these days because North Korea has been sending like back the trash balloons and poop balloons to South Korea. So it's not happening as much now, but yeah, a lot of times like through the borders it travels and gets smuggled in. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
I was surprised to hear you say that guns are sold on the black market in North Korea.
No, not guns.
Or I heard you say gun. No. I can't imagine. Them.
Oh, you can find everything except cat's horn.
What?
Cat's horn. But yeah, a gun. Maybe you can. I'm not sure.
I wouldn't think that regime could possibly tolerate.
Exactly. No, yeah. Guns would not. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. Yes. We gotta keep track of who has like, we should have one of those like the pamphlets, you know, like the 1, 2, 3 for like in an auction.
In your present work, in this nonprofit, it sounds like you've met several other North Korean defectors.
Yes.
And so there's 3 parts to this question, short parts. One is, do they have stories of their own families having been executed because they defected? And related to that, to any of these refugees, you're basically an orphan, so maybe you don't have so much connection, but I can't imagine what it must be like a North Korean refugee, knowing that they freed themselves, but their family may be executed, or they may have no contact ever for the rest of their life with it.
Mhm.
Are they able to have any communication with their families back in North Korea? And the last little part is, what happened to your brother that you talked to your half brother?
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. So the first part, yes, I've met a lot of North Korean defectors while working for nonprofits, and also through my nonprofits, I'm actually bringing 3 North Korean refugees this summer, and kind of giving them opportunities to meet with mentors and teach them English, things like that. And a lot of people can share their stories and be a YouTuber in South Korea because they don't have immediate families back in North Korea. So as I am, I do have half brothers, but they're Chinese. So the worst thing that could happen to them is like, oh, you gotta go live in China now. I mean, which is like, who wouldn't love that? Right? And yeah, and one of my friend, yes, his family was persecuted because he escaped North Korea and came to South Korea, and they were executed. And also that's the reason why a lot of North Korean defectors chooses to be silent. It's because they're thinking about their family's safety. And again, like, so UN put a sanction, right, in North Korea right now, and you can't do really trade with North Korea. But these people are working so hard in South Korea, and they're actually sending money into North Korea. They've like found a broker connections and networks and sending in money to support their own family. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. Did I answer everything?
And then the last part, and you still have contact with your half brother who helped you to escape the second time?
No. Second time was by myself. The first time he helped me to escape. And then the second time I escaped by myself. And the last time that I spoke with him was 2013. He came into China, and I had a phone number of a friend when I was in China. And then I called him, and then through him, like I was able to get connected. And that's when I heard, like right after Kim Jong-il died, right back in 2011, when Kim Jong-il died, nobody cried because like, oh well, because like their loyalty is not like way up here yet, or way up here. So the government had to come out, the regime had to come out and say, your dear leader just died. Like shed some tear, or you're gonna be in trouble. Yeah. So my half brother told me that, I was like, whoa. Yeah. But I right now I can't. I'm not in contact with him because I mean again it's like a dangerous, and like everything is cut off right now. But someday I hope to contact him and possibly bring him to America and just like show him all of these. Like if I were to tell him this kind of life, he wouldn't believe me that I'm living this kind of life. Because it's unimaginable and it's unfathomable. But I wish to bring him here one day. Thank you. Yes, let's go that way. So, oh, yeah, sure.
I had two like one of the people that like skating, yeah, like we saw like our shirt in the street, and then if I meet to the one of like people who like skating for the two stuff, and then it's also to skate. Curious to know if they are like skate.
Mm.
A second question, I'm sure like as you know, we grew up in North Korea, there's a lot of like Catholic beliefs that like are being ingrained in you and like kind of have to learn and change. Like coming to California, I'm curious to know like what kind of these habits are hardest to make you still have them?
Yeah. Thanks for asking the question. Yeah. So it depends on who you are. And of course, North Korean regime actually kept in tap of like people who are doing like a YouTube and kind of like online activities up until like early 2010s, like 2012, 2013, but they ran out of money, so they don't do that anymore. And right after Kim Jong Nam got assassinated in Malaysia, so I mean it is still a legitimate threat, but North Korean regime has different priorities, right? So they would go for like people who are like inner circles, and if they're going to spend so much resources and money like planting this different kind of people into South Korea, or I don't think in America, but who knows? You never know. But again, like, yeah, it depends on who you are and like depending on like, what you're doing, right? So there could be some issues, but I'm an American citizen, so I am safe. I just can't travel to certain countries where, they might have North Korean embassies. And then the second question was, what was it? Oh, the habits. When I first came to America, I just blindly followed everything. Like people just, oh yeah, whenever people sneeze, you say bless you. I'm like, why? Like, why do you invoke God when you just sneeze? But I'm like, well, that's the culture, sure. And like the tip culture was like very weird. It's like, wait, like how do you like why? It's like I'm already paying for the food, but I'm giving you the money, and that's including it. But I'm like, oh, you have to leave the tip, like 15%. But I just didn't get the concept, so I developed this rule of like $5 for everything, and it worked really, really well until it didn't. When my social worker went to restaurant together, and then he left a zero on the tip jar, in the like a receipt, and then he wanted to give cash, and they got into an argument. It's like, what is my gratitude? And they're just arguing about the cash and the tips. And then I was like, oh, I don't want to ever be in that situation, so I'll just do whatever you ask me to do. But one of the hardest thing was believing that Kim Jong Il and Kim Il Sung was bad. Like one of the hardest thing to believe. Like when I first first learned about, like even when I came to China, like I went to the restaurant one day, and then they're talking about like, oh, in Chinese, like Kim Jong Un, blah blah, Kim Jong Il, blah blah blah, like Kim Jong Un, like pig, like fat pig. And as soon as I heard that, like my heart just dropped, and it's like, am I supposed to be here? And just running out. And when I came to America, I learned that the Japanese and the America bombed Hiroshima and Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Japanese surrendered. And that was like a complete shock because like I was like, whoa, so yeah, it's like everything was allowed, kind of. But for me, like adaptability wasn't an option. It was kind of like almost like a survival instinct. So I was able to like just like a sponge, like just like observe everything. But there's a lot of different North Korean defectors who can't do that. Like they struggles to adapt and struggles to adjust, and like they do want to go back to North Korea because life was simple back then. But yeah, I'm one of the lucky case where when I first came to America, like I did have some support from the resettlement agency. So yeah, you're welcome. Yes. And also, Jess, would you please keep like the questions and going to like orders? Yes, sure, sure, sure. And then yeah.
Actually, I'm going to.
Okay. Yeah.
We should do certain things, and the government want us to see what's. We can only see what the government.
Yeah.
We are that is a visit to inform us to show how cheap it was in this country.
Yeah.
And other peasants and workers, but I'm not sure if they know they're actors, they're people.
Yeah.
If they have 10 seconds. or guess what what do they actually think about?
Yeah.
That kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, tourism is now closed, but back then, like, Americans can actually go to Pyongyang and experience all these great things of like the hotels, water parks, right, and zoos and a lot of different things. And again, like it's a guided tour, right? Guided tour meaning like there's like always people are watching you and kind of like follow you around. Hey, you can go there, you can't go there, or you can only go there. Um, And I've recently interviewed a North Korean defector who was from Pyongyang, and he did not know like what was going on outside of Pyongyang. So the locals who are living in Pyongyang, they literally think that everywhere in North Korea is like that. Like, and because they're elites, they're chosen 1% of elites who are living in North Korea, and they're descendants of the elites. Therefore, their life is genuinely much better than any North Koreans, right? So what you're seeing, maybe like when you're going to see locals, maybe seeing these children or these kind of people, like that might be their genuine happiness. Like they're genuinely happy, living in Pyongyang, but that's not the whole picture. The North Korean regime, they don't want you to see the whole picture. They just want to see Pyongyang, and then everywhere is like that in North Korea. So did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I had a question about your life when you arrived in America. So you didn't, I assume, like, you didn't know anybody. Like, did you live alone? Like, how did you integrate? Like, who helped you kind of?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. I had a resettlement agency, and they had found a foster care home for me. The parents were Chinese, and I spoke broken Chinese. They didn't speak Korean. I didn't speak English. So we're communicating with the survival Chinese that I learned when I was in China. And then all they can say is like, oh, 你吃饱了吗? Like 你饿吗? 回家, it's like go to sleep, or like, go home, are you hungry? So it made me feel right now, right? I'm looking back, and like one of the reasons why I struggled so much was because I couldn't really communicate with them to a level, like a deeper level of like to communicate, to get to know each other, communicate to build relationship. It was more of like, like a higher level kind of communication that made it feel more like a guest at their house than being like a foster caring, like really like a child in a way. But yeah, I had a foster care home for 6 months, and then my social worker actually was the one who's like a father figure to me a lot of times. So he was at my wedding as a best man. Yeah, I still talk to him a lot, and so I had that support system of Catholic Charities. It's called Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County. It's in San Jose, and they are the resettlement agency. They don't just help refugees, but they help juveniles, and they help different immigrants and different refugees. Yeah, so I had that system. Did that answer your question? Perfect. Yes.
So thank you so much for being here. I had a question revolving around like you finding your way into Christianity, and you could like worship different God and like Jesus and all of that. How was it like? Do you ever feel like confused or like guilt or anything like that? Because you grew up almost like worshiping like with Korean leaders. You grew up thinking that as almost like the religious figure, all the way to finding, for yourself, a religion for yourself. How was that experience, like balancing your previous experience, like finding God?
Yeah, great question actually. Wow. Kim Il Sung, again, North Korea was actually, Pyongyang was actually once known as the Jerusalem of the East, because there were so many Christians in the like 1930s. And Kim Il Sung grew up Catholic because his mother, Kang Ban-seok, was a Catholic. That's why he knows Bible so well, and he was able to actually mimic his life with Jesus' life. And a lot of like brainwashing songs that are in North Korea, it felt like hymns. When I came to America, I went to Korean church, and I'm just like standing there, like whenever like choir singing, I'm singing, like it felt like very familiar. Of like I know these chords, like I know these lyrics, I know I heard this like, so that made it for me like personally a little bit, it's like almost like distant church, like what in the beginning, like distant church, because like it just felt awfully familiar. But I came to Christianity and came to know Jesus because when I was like I always try to like I'm still trying to be a good Christian and trying to read the Bible, pray every day. Um, but I always remind myself when I was in the detention center, like I would pray. And I would feel like, even though I'm hungry, even though I'm anxious, even though I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, but after praying, I would just feel this overwhelming like presence of calmness in my heart. And also like, when I was praying in the road and this guy showing up, yes, that might be a luck, that might be, I'm just extremely lucky, or it could be a divine, intervention, that could happen. So I always try to remember that. And then, yeah, I got baptized, afterwards when I came to America. Yeah, so I'm still trying to be, I'm trying to learn Christianity and what it means, for me, and what it means for North Korean people as well. Did that answer your question? Okay, awesome.
Maybe.
Yeah, yeah, one or two more. Where?
Oh, I saw this hand first.
Okay, yes.
Here, we've been talking about the importance of community to you, and you mentioned your friends, but also how a lot of defectors sometimes won't speak out. And so I was kind of wondering if there was a community like everywhere you went in like California, or like in the US or in China, or is that something that you develop more through working with like nonprofits like NGOs?
Good question. So I started my own community when I came to America, and then the Catholic Charities, because the support the group, they actually introduced to like different communities of like, oh, we have family nights, like every Saturday, one Saturday a month, we would gather together and we would eat, whoever cooks next. And then I had that, and I was introduced to that first, and I got used to it. And then I went to churches, different churches, and I was able to find community within. And then I went to coding boot camp, and then that's where I was able to like get connected on LinkedIn, and really like get meet new people who are in the same interest as I am, and then we're communicating, and then we're like, hey, let's play games, or let's play like a solving algorithms together, and then see who can resolve it, like who can solve it faster, and those kind of communities actually help me. But like those kind of communities who can actually build you up and help you, that's the community that I'm talking about. Not like communities like the K-Town in LA or like Chinatown in San Francisco. Believe it or not, there are communities in South Korea that are for North Korean defectors, right? But the thing that I don't like about that community is all of those communities are basically North Korean people based, right? So these people escape from North Korea, come to South Korea, and they build their own North Korean community. So in a way, you're not really escaping North Korea anymore. You're just coming from one bad place and coming to South Korea where it's even more competitive and we're more, it's like a 살고해 in a way. Sorry. But therefore, you know what I mean? Like the community itself is like very, in a way, toxic, because there could be a lot of different things that are happening. So the community that I'm talking about is like the people that who can help you, and mentors and advisors and people who can actually help build your career and path. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. And then one more, yeah. I'll be also staying after for a while. So if you want to stay and just chill for a bit, eat some more pizza, talk to me, you're welcome to do so.
about your life prior to versus sleeping,
Mhm.
and maybe like what was dictating the rhythm of your day and like your day-to-day life. Because I watched like documentaries and they said that, for example, there was announcements of something like broadcasted in like and it's like in the city to wake people up.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
work. So I was wondering how was your day-to-day life?
yeah. So my like I was in the hostile class. Well, first of all, when I was 9, I dropped out of school because I had to nurse my mom because she got sick. And then after she passed, and then for the 2 years that when I was 10 and 11, I couldn't go to school. I was just nursing her. And then after she passed, I became homeless. I used to live with my aunt too, but I was being kicked out, all the time. So my personal life was, like designed a lot in like trying to survive, like finding food, and traveling a lot, being kicked out in different houses, like different places. And you're right. Like there are speaker cars that drives by, and kind of blast like music, like at 5 a.m. in the morning, to wake you up and to ask for a voluntary like a cleanups on the streets. And also there are this thing called inminban. So inminban is like a people's unit where there's a head of that unit is watching over several households. And you're supposed to have meetings like every week of like, and we hold during that meeting, we have this like the self-criticism sessions, like, quoting like one of the things that Kim Il-sung or Kim Jong-il once says like, oh, my dear leader Kim Jong-il said to live in, this way, but this week I wasn't able to do that, because I was distracted, something like that. So we call that Inminban Hui. So we're supposed to have that every week, and you are supposed to watch each other, like classmates watch each other. Your kids are actually keep monitoring you because the teachers actually encourage you to, tell the teachers what happened at home. So it's like, because your dad did this, did your dad did this, and one of my neighbor kid, he went to school and told his teacher that he rolled a tobacco on a picture on a newspaper that actually had Kim Il Sung's face on it, and then his dad got 6 months of a forced labor re-educational camp, right? And the neighbors are actually keeping tabs on each other for like if you were to rat on your neighbors, like you would get some like a rice, for example, like 1 extra kilograms of rice, or you maybe get like a different social status, things like that. So you're encouraged to keep tabs, right? Because again, like a lot of people think that like nuclear weapon is like the most powerful weapon, but maybe it is. But in North Korea, at least, like the information control is the most powerful thing, because North Korean regime actually controls how you think, how you see things, what you say. They don't allow you to imagine, right? So that's why North Korea was able to like maintain this dictatorship for the past like 80 years now. Yeah. So every single movement is watched, and you're supposed to keep tabs on each other. Yeah. But like one last thing, like when you're watching like South Korean dramas, that's an exception because like we're friends and we're on a same boat, right? So when you're watching these kind of dramas together, like if you read it on me, I'm gonna read it on you too. So it's like we can't really do that. So we form these bonds, a little bit of bonds together at multiple different places. And that's why there are 34,000 North Korean refugees that are in South Korea. And there are currently 200,000 North Korean refugees currently hiding in China. Yeah, so there are a lot more. And there are 400 here in America, including me. That is your question? Okay, awesome.
Thank you. Taught us so much. You've taken us into a world that is really invisible to us that we wonder about, and you've given us like tremendous insight. So thank you so much, and we hope you'll come visit again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. Well, thank you so much for being here, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks so much. I gotta.